And I grew up in a time, I guess, when nobody knew how to spell Heidi. And so I just figured that is a terrible author name. You want something that's super easy to look up and to say to the bookstore, I'm looking for author, whatever, or type it. And Anna, it doesn't get any easier than Anna, really. And so also Anna is useful internationally, so I just said heck with it. And then I spent quality time in my office one afternoon at work when I was feeling stupid and just looking up domain names until I found one. HeidiJohnson.com turned out was taken by a photographer, and my protagonist for the book I was pitching at that time was a photographer. So I thought, well, this is a disaster. I can't go there. So I made up Anna Castle. I thought Castle, easy to remember, easy to spell, sounds historical. And so, that's where that came from. So I write 3 historical mystery series. I need to update my bio. My kind of flagship series, the first one is the Francis Bacon mystery series. So Francis Bacon, the philosopher, courtier, lawyer, is my sleuth. He was the father of inductive reasoning, or rather the first early promoter of inductive reasoning. So I thought, well, that makes him an ideal sleuth. And the Elizabethan period is just so much fun. I became totally hooked on it once I started reading about it. Now I can't get out of it. And I'm on I will start book 8 on July 1st, or suffer the consequences. And then I start reading for that book in June. And then the second series is the Professor and Mrs. Moriarty series. At the time I started that one, I had an agent, or I was still, I had an agent. I was trying to think of something really commercial while she shopped on Francis Bacon mysteries, which are kind of pointy-headed and not all that commercial. But I have readers. I'm happy with my audience now. I always want more, but I'm happy now. I'm glad I didn't get a publishing contract. But anyway, so I thought, okay, I'll turn the Holmes canon on its head and make Moriarty a good guy. I had a lot of fun. There's almost nothing. There's like 3 paragraphs all told in the whole canon that actually tells you something about Professor Moriarty. It's practically nothing. So you can build whatever you want on top of it, and I did. So those are up to 4. I'm not writing one of those this year. The 5th one will be out probably in June of next year. And then I fell into this thing I couldn't resist, a series that I call Village Fantasy, because it's not urban fantasy. It's very non-urban. It's my paranormal Elizabethan cozy mystery novella series, which is a heck of a mouthful. And we were talking about categories last time. Noreen is laughing because categorize that. But their novellas are so much fun to write. They're short. It's like 130 pages, 30,000 words. You can finish one in 2 weeks if it rains all the time. And so I'm working on the 3rd one right now. They're light. The premise is that everything people believed in Shakespeare's time is actually real. So I have Shakespearean kinds of fairies and witches, and I have the King of the Cats, talking stuffed crocodile. That kind of stuff goes on in my village, which is Ereford, because it's easier to make up a town than to use a real one like Stratford-upon-Avon, just in case of whatever. So anyway, those are the books. Biographically, I have way overeducated for my current job. I have a bachelor's in the classics, a master's in computer science, and a PhD in linguistics from the big university down the street. And I was an assistant professor for 1 year and got brought back to UT to manage a digital archive of multimedia resources in about the indigenous languages of Latin America, because my dissertation was a grammar of southern languages, southern Mexico. And that was great. Little did I know that job was preparing me to be a self-publishing author. I can format anything into any other format. I know how to do all the little tasks. I mean, these kind of posts at universities are almost always one person, right? With a got to have a PhD, got to have a big title, and a little bitty office with no windows and a bunch of computers, and every now and then some grad students. And so you do everything. You order the paper clips, you dust the lab, you write the grant proposals, you greet you pick up the important visitors at the airport and stuff. So that was perfect preparation to be self-starter and know all these little computery, officey kind of jobs for being a self-publishing author. So that is, let's see, was anything else? Yeah. So writing historical fiction combines my lifelong love of stories and learning. And that is the end of my official bio with a lot of extra. Woo, verbiage. Okay, done. Bio done. Yeah. Questions? Should I just move on? Kathy, you're back. Okay, so I'm going to share my
Okay, just for the record, the email has been sent out. Roxana has been told to let people in because there might be some more out there. You did a lovely job of introducing yourself. Thank you so much. And okay, let's talk. How do you write the historical novel?
Right, historical mysteries. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, like before. Come along now. Share yourself. Beep beep. There it is. This thing is actually quite easy. Okay, does that, everybody can see that well enough? Is that okay the way it is? Yeah, okay. So make it just a little bit bigger. Okay, so historical mysteries are a lot of fun to write. That's slide one. And historical or not, the important thing to remember is that it is still a mystery. You need a sleuth, whether amateur or professional. And there were thief takers, coroners, something like sheriffs, something like, king's investigator, emperor's, personal secretary. There was some kind of official to investigate crime pretty much every time and place that you can think of, going all the way back. I don't know exactly what hunters and gatherers might have done, but there was some structure to a tribe, and there would be somebody whose job it would be, the chief warrior, the main hunter, anybody. You can always find somebody. We get bobbies, the first proto police in England in 1829, and real police in New York City in 1844. So from this point forward, we have them in France, we have them in most of Europe, and I'm sorry I don't know much about Japan, but there have always been officials. So if you want a professional that makes things easier, you don't have to make up reasons for them to go forth and investigate a murder. It's their job. They're going to go. So with amateurs, you can pick anybody, be whoever you want, but choose someone who can move around freely in your chosen setting and ask questions. There's a reason we don't get a lot of murder mysteries centered around peasants, right? They work to themselves to the bone. For one thing, they get work to the bone, and then they don't have any scope. They can't wander around at will. They don't have the means to do so. So you're gonna need somebody with scope. That's why I don't know if anybody remembers Margaret Fraser's Dame Frévis mysteries. A nun is kind of perfect, and of course Brother Cadfael, a monk. They move around quite a bit, and they can go from high to low. They communicate with the peasantry as well as with the great lords. A great lord might send his clerk out. Depending on the period, that great lord isn't going to go himself, and people will lie to him just automatically, so that he would be a lousy sleuth. But a lady who is a penchant for disguise, a laundress could do some sleuthing within a limited community. She's getting her nose into everybody's shorts, right? So she could do that. You're still going to want that sidekick. They're very handy. Your sleuth has to have somebody to talk to while they're figuring out things. You can't have it all be internal monologue. Agatha Christie's sleuths like Hastings were wonderful for leading the reader off in the wrong direction. So your sidekicks have multiple roles. They can be love interests. They can be comedic relief. So you're going to want one. Someone to rescue. If the sidekick is kidnapped, you got to go after him. Your sidekick could be a dog. I mean, a lot of cozies are like that these days. And people have had dogs for, tens of thousands of years. So you can go as far back as you want with that one. You're going to want a love interest. There aren't very many stories in the world. Rambo is the only one. That's the example everyone comes up with of a story with no romantic subplot. Everything else has a romantic subplot. And they help keep a series cooking because relationships go up and down. Sidekicks get into trouble. You got to have something going on in each series that's about the characters. That's true for any mystery. Your villain must still be clever and compelling, must be a worthy opponent for your sleuth. in any time and place. In the past, crimes were a lot easier to get away with before the 20th century. Certainly in Elizabethan England, the odds of anybody even recognizing that your victim has been poisoned are pretty slim. So higher ups and lower downs will help or hinder in ways that are very similar to the modern world, even though they will be historically special ones in certain ways, right? But we have higher ups and lower downs who help and hinder. You might get lied to. They might send you home if they're more powerful than you are. Lords have less power nowadays, but there are people with tons of power. I mean, you know, if Jeff Bezos didn't want you investigating him, I imagine he'd put a stop to it pretty quick. You'll find far fewer people below stairs, but you'll find far more people out there, you know, in the general milieu. So besides which, historically, you're going to be below stairs. You have servants. Technically, historical fiction is like 50 years from the present. So for a lot of people, that's within our own lifetimes now. As we get older, it's like, oh my God, this is historical. I remember it. But so technically, I think we're up to the 60s and 70s qualifying for historical fiction. I don't know how popular those periods are. You still have to craft clues. You still need red herrings. You still need witnesses, reliable and otherwise. So all the stuff you know about writing a mystery applies. Here's a special note about women. Women did everything, everywhere, all the time. The idea that women of the past were feeble and they were, you know, laws restricted them. People paid a lot less attention to the law in the past than they do now, and we don't pay that much attention. I mean, look at all the anti-maskers running around. If if there's an ordinance that says, oh, you have to wear a mask, yeah, hell no, I'm not going to. So not much you can do about it. In those days, there was nothing anybody could do. I have notes in my notes about the Elizabethan period where the sheriff and his men went out to, you know, arrest a woman, a lady, a countess or something, for harboring Catholic priests on her estate, and she refused to open the door to him. So the thing that is preserved in history is his letter to Lord Burleigh, the Lord Treasurer, saying, what am I supposed to do? He's helpless. He can't arrest a countess. He can't do anything about a lady. And a lesser woman, a gentlewoman. No, I think I have another note. Pardon me, I've got a thing in my throat. A prosperous yeoman's wife. The bailiff came to arrest her and she ran him off with a pitchfork. He tried twice and then he gave up. So, I mean, okay, laws, sure, there are laws, but in those days, people didn't care about them that much. Okay, women did everywhere, sometimes behind the cover of a husband or father. There are plenty of cases in history that you can find if you look, of queens ruling behind their son. Maybe he's a minor son. Maybe they're ruling behind their husband who is a lazy idiot or a super religious. I mean, think about Eleanor of Aquitaine and whichever Louis she was married to. He was very devoted to religion, and she was hardcore political, you know, savant. So never underestimate the ability of a strong-minded, intelligent woman to do what she wants, regardless of the time and place. She'll find a way. So a laundress can't interrogate a lord unless she's done him a favor, like keeping a secret, and she has a skill of asking questions without seeming to be interrogating. I mean, I think that a good, clever laundress could find out quite a bit from a lord who owes her a favor. He might even be the one who hired her. Also, remember that up until the 20th century, clothes were extremely gendered in most times and places. People would know who you were by looking at your clothes. They would know everything. They would know your gender, your class, your status, your sense of self. They knew a lot more. We go out in jeans and t-shirts, all of us. I'm sorry. You just can't really tell that much. I was afraid this was going to happen. My throat's been bugging me. But a woman in a dress, a person in a dress with no beard was a woman. A person in trousers with a beard was a man. Anyone could see it at a glance from a distance. If you can manipulate your voice a little bit and your body style, you could get away with it. People just wouldn't doubt you. People don't pay that much attention to other people when it comes right down to it. And a good sleuth would know that. So not everyone was straight. Not everyone obeyed the law. Not everyone was serious about whatever religion they purportedly, publicly espoused. There are a lot of complaints about the behavior of people in churches in Elizabethan England. When church was compulsory, people would clean their guns and the guns would go off. They would gamble, they would play dice, they would fall asleep, they would sit in the back corner gossiping in full voice. They would have sex. I mean, there was just there very little of what we would consider proper church behavior. And these are, good Christian men and women. So take your laws from the past with a huge tablespoon of salt. Okay. So you still have all the usual genres in historical fiction. Police procedurals. I mean, think about Foyle's War. The Brother Catfall mysteries revolve around forensic evidence for the most part, such as there was always something. Some people were very observant, and they knew a lot about bodies. They didn't know about anything, microscopic. They didn't know about blood circulation, but they knew a lot about blunt force and sharp weapon injuries. A lot more than we know. Noir, Jerry Wisterson wrote 15 medieval noir mysteries. I'm not quite sure what's so noir about them, but you could easily write noir, just pick a city, noirs are urban. Cozies galore in historical fiction. I found some from ancient Egypt, up to the 60s. The ones that are really, really popular today are anything in the Downton Abbey time span, which continues to be extremely popular. So I highly recommend Sarah Rosette's High Society Lady Detective cozies. She's a great cozy writer. She just writes this perfectly crafted cozy mysteries. And she's a really nice person too. So traditional, of course, investigations use forensics when they're there. It's basically what I write, but they're largely character driven. They're going to get confessions out of people. They're going to trick people. My Francis Bacon mysteries tend to involve a clever ploy at the end in which Francis somehow manages to get the villain to betray themselves with witnesses. So and then we don't know. They may or may not hang depending on their status. So thrillers, there are historical thrillers. Ken Follett wrote them. Umberto Eco's Name of the Rose is, I would call that a thriller, even though it all takes place in one place. Lots of others. So pick your genre, same genre, whatever you like, just move it back. Okay, are we all clear on that, right? Just interrupt me if you feel like it. Okay, I think the little clock thing went away. So the most important thing about writing historical mystery is to remember that mysteries run in
Just for the record, sorry. That was my chance to break in, and I was on mute. Replying to some of the stuff you were talking, Noreen said, I heard some Pilgrim noir that in 1629 New England is coming out.
Oh yeah, I'll bet that would be very noirish. Noir I thought was typically urban, but maybe it just means dark, in mood, as opposed to a cozy, which is always a little light humor, light mood. So yeah, that sounds good, because I mean, those were dark times. There was some nasty stuff going on, and a lot of conflict. Yeah, I got my mom to watch The Crucible with me once, which I thought it's such a great movie, and she was just like, "Oh, Heidi, why did you make me watch that thing?" It was very depressing. I had forgotten it. So well done. Anything else? Now you're mute again, Kathy.
I'm trying so hard not to interrupt you.
No, I interrupt. I don't mind.
Sorry, guys. But no, nothing else so far, but I'm sure there will be.
Okay, now we're rolling into the truly historical part. Okay, so mysteries run in series, right? And you're going to hopefully write a long series because it'll be so popular. So you want to choose your setting wisely. You will settle down and grow crops here. You will build a castle here. You will live here for a long time. You will read a ton of books and articles or whatever you can find about this time and place. So you better love it, is what I'm trying to get at. Find a setting that speaks to you. Do you just love the clothes, the houses, the manners? Are you a massive Jane Austen fan? That's what stimulated the whole Regency, everything. And there's plenty of room in the Regency period. There's plenty of room in the Edwardian period. People who love that stuff, they can read a lot faster than we can write. Is there a classic novel that you would love to move into and live there for the rest of your life? I'm basically living in Shakespeare's world and I like it there. It's wonderful. Are you endlessly fascinated by ancient Chinese civil servants and their rigorous training? Do you love ancient Egypt? You gotta love the place. Would you like to live, you want to hang out in castles or beautiful stately homes or wattle and daub huts? Or in, I kind of tend towards the professional class. So I'm sort of in those, the upper, the gentry is where I am rather than the nobility. The lesser sort often have less scope, although, there are plenty of people in the working class who can move around and do stuff. We'll talk about research later, but you must learn a great deal about the material culture of your chosen time and place to write a novel. And this is the part that your average history book will skip right over. So you got to look for social history, is what it's called. Clothes, houses, furniture, food, dishes, transportation, weapons. I mean, the fact that not every chimneys are relatively new in the Elizabethan period. They just started building them, and the people are commenting on it. Oh, they're sprouting up all over. Everybody's got a chimney these days. Putting glass in windows is new. It's like Hardwick Hall, more glass than wall. People were so astounded by the magnificent windows, these little bitty handmade panes of glass put into the windows. So, things like that are kind of fun to know. If it's new, then your people can comment on it. You've got more fruit for clues and things like that. Maybe they don't know how to deal with windows, or maybe the windows are hard to open. Anyway, you got to know this stuff. And you got to get it right, or people will throw your book away immediately. I read some book where they were talking about blueberries in Elizabethan England. Sorry, no blueberries. Yeah, they wouldn't even have blueberries in most of the United States at that time. Certainly not everybody. Carrots were new, right? They were a novelty food brought over from France. And so I put them, I think they're spreading now. I think I put some in the pot with somebody's, a very prosperous yeoman's house in my Cunning Woman series, my Village Fantasies. Francis Bacon gets carrots. Not most people wouldn't be eating carrots. That's too exotic. So you got to know, eat those turnips, man. You got to get your turnips. So if your main goal as a writer, especially, is to maximize income, which is not everybody's main goal, it's just one among many, choose a popular setting that you love. So I would say go Edwardian these days if you love it, or Victorian, but don't be so eggheady as I am. My books always end up being a little too pointy-headed, I think, to be popular. And write shorter ones, 70,000, 75,000 tops. So early 20th century, late 19th century. But if you don't love it, then don't do it. You've got to love what you're writing, or you won't, it will show. Your readers will know. There are other goals, like writing what you want. If you love ancient Greece, write ancient Greece. You will find readers if you self-publish. You can't sell a book like that to the big five. You might find a small press that will take it if it's really good, but and don't publish a book that's not ready to be published. But you will find readers. There are readers who love ancient world mysteries. So choose wisely. Okay, so how much research do you have to do? People say. That's kind of a silly question once you've fully internalized everything I just said. If you love it, then it's not a chore, right? It's not how much do I have to do. It's like, when should I tear myself away from these endlessly wonderful books, history books, and start writing my novel? So you have to do a lot of research at first. The more you know, the easier it is to tell your story without constantly wondering, wait, can I do that? Wait, do they have that? And so that, it's good to kind of front load. I read for a couple of years. I was working full time, and I happened to have an office in the UT main library building on the same floor as all the English history books. So I read a lot for a couple of years before I wrote the first Francis Bacon mystery. But now what I'll do, I try not to stop and look stuff up because I'm a very restless writer as it is. But so I'll try to keep a list of questions, and then in a second draft, then I'll spend a day going up and looking up all my questions and putting that thing in. You do a lot, as I say, front load a lot of research. You do less and less and less. So starting the 8th Bacon book this summer, I really just need to reread one important book that's central to this particular story. And I might move forward, reread Bacon bio for the period specifically around the time that I am, make sure I know what he's up to. A couple other major characters, I'll just read that part of their biography. It's like this will be set in 1594, I think. And so I'll just read, a little bit about the mid 90s and see where everybody is and make sure they're in London and not, in Ireland or someplace. I had a reader write a note to me saying, oh, Sir Robert Carey was actually on the continent at the time you put him in Richmond. I'm like, oh, they were very nice about it. I didn't look him up. He was just a walk-on. So I read a mountain for the first couple of books. I read a mountain for the second book. I kind of way got too into it, I guess. But I'm glad I did, because I learned so much about religious controversy in the late Elizabethan period that I now really feel like I understand it. I feel like I understand what my characters think about each other's religions and about their own religion and about how that relates to society, which makes it very easy for me to write each subsequent book on that. You'll focus on the social history, unless your sleuth is a politician, and that's their day job, right? That bits that you have about the day job are going to be political affairs. Otherwise, they don't play much of a role, and it can be nice to connect them, but don't just do like the book I just stopped listening to, best-selling book, Death Below Stairs by Jennifer Ashley. Somebody in this group probably loved it. I like the setup. She's a cook in a fine house, and the protagonist love interest is a kind of a chameleon character, gets all around. And I like stuff, but every now and then she has somebody read off a headline from a newspaper just to like touch base with larger political affairs. Nothing whatsoever to do with the plot. Nothing. So don't do that. What's the point of it? You gotta stick to your plot. If your character is going off to fight in France, you're going to want to know a little bit about that. Otherwise, do like the Regency writers do and don't worry too much about the fighting in France. Whoops, oh dear, I lost. I don't know why I did that. Okay, so Francis Bacon, on the other hand, was in the thick of things as a courtier. So his casual conversations when he's hanging out in the Queen's presence chamber, which he does because he's allowed to, and he wants to keep it up to make sure he maintains the privilege. And also because every now and then the Queen will crook her finger at him and ask him a question for a reference. I mean, he's known for his ginormous brain and the fact that he's read everything and remembers everything and speaks, many languages. So they'll say, so what was this? And then he'll tell them, and then he'll go back to his little corner. Brother Cadfael's word was often turned upside down by political events, and that often mysteries were often connected to those events. So, if the larger world crashes in on your story, then absolutely you need to get that right. So you're going to read a book about it. I find that stuff a lot easier to learn and deal with than the cultural history. Women's clothes change every year. It's just really hard. Here we go. I'm moving on. My Moriartys rarely touch on world events. Each one of those books takes place in its own little subculture. So maybe there's something to do with the world, but maybe it's all inside a theater or an expensive spa. Sarah Rosette's books have spies who are somewhat connected to what's going on the continent, but you'd hardly know it. The stories are domestic, stately home mysteries. So you want to invest in books about costume or bookmark some pages, because you are looking at stuff all the time while you're writing. You have to choose a hat like every 15 minutes, and hats are crucial. Crucial. It's so great that John F. Kennedy caused Americans to stop wearing hats, because we modern people don't even have to think about them. In the past, hats were essential and very highly subject to the fashion and means of the character. So you can tell everything you want to know about a person from their hat. Terrible hats. Okay, so historical settings can be thick or thin. And here you need to know your goals to decide how to choose a setting. You need to know your audience, your intended audience, to decide how thick you're going to make that setting. So I personally, as a reader, like settings thick and immersive. I want to feel like I've traveled back in time. That implies for me, more importantly than anything, to the worldviews and the attitudes of the people. So I really hate it when I read a book set, I don't know, in Elizabethan times, when people say tolerant things about Jews. They would not. They might say something sort of, they'd be like Christopher Marlowe and say, oh, but a Jew, he's a man, he has the same kinds of hates and likes that we have, but emphasis on the hates. But he's still going to create them as a villain because they're just they're alien. It's like our casting some kind of scary literal alien from outer space characters is about the way they would think of them. So it's way too modern an attitude unless they've just come back from unaware. So I don't want characters with modern attitudes toward the people around them any more than I want a book full of violent bigots. So that's a line that has to be walked. Francis Bacon was a devout Christian, not a Calvinist like his mother. I don't think he believed in hell or demons, or she probably didn't either. That's the Calvinists didn't believe in any of that supernatural nonsense. But he was as tolerant as anyone gets, and he was not tolerant of Mohammedanism. My other character, his sidekick, Thomas Clarity, hates Catholics, hates them with a passion. He considers Catholics and Spaniards to be the same thing, and he loathes them. They are the enemy. He wouldn't trust one as far as he could throw one. So you need to know who your people are and know what their attitudes are. He's a good person. He's a good Englishman. He's a kind and thoughtful guy. But we all have our prejudices. And oh yeah, Francis Bacon getting down with the people. Yeah, that's never going to happen. No, he was definitely not like he believed that it was really important not to tax the people out of their homes, because then you would just cause disruption and unrest. It wasn't, because he thought it was so important that the people prosper and, are tenderly cared for. No. And he didn't actually know any such people except his own servants and other people's servants, and didn't want to. He was a monarchist. And yeah. So you need to know who these guys are, who your people are. Class distinctions were facts of nature in his day. And even people like Thomas Clarity, who were crossing from one class to another as hard as they could go, respected those distinctions and actually approved of them. He just wanted to be on the other side. He didn't want that line not to exist. Other readers, now we move on to the thin setting. So, the worldviews are not quite the same thing as a thick and thin setting, but other readers don't want a novel that makes them work by learning new things. They are tired at the end of the day when they get to plop down with a novel, and they want to go back to Downton Abbey and hang with Lady Mary and company for a while in a new setting, something new, or whatever period. They want a fun costume drama. They're very happy with stereotypes about class and religion because that's not why they came to that book, is what I mean, not what they're for as the reader. Tasha Alexander writes thin historicals, lots of Worth gowns and hansom cabs, but lots of modern attitudes as well. She has one scene in her first book. I haven't read a book by her. I read the first two and I didn't like them. So maybe she's changed. But where her heroine, who has recently lost everybody, she's alone in the house. So she has dinner at the dining table all by herself. And then at the end, instead of going to the drawing room for coffee, she has the butler bring her brandy and a cigar and puts her feet on the table and sits there chatting with him. That would never happen. She is the real person that woman was raised to be, and that butler who they are. It could not happen. It would be like me going up on the roof, to have a conversation with somebody. Yeah, never going to happen. I'm a little acrophobic. That's just an impossible thing to write. So that's a very anachronistic characterization of that woman. She's making her like a modern woman in that moment. And a lot of people love that. I call it steampunky. I don't know why, but it's an insertion of modern views into the historical context. And a lot of people like it because they're using that book to slip in, or not, slip into a Worth gown. You're sewn into your Worth gown. And then you go and play kind of role play through the medium of this book. But you want to take your own existing beliefs about equality and justice and women's rights and all that stuff with you. So neither is abstractly better or worse. I don't like that kind. Lots of people love them. In fact, they tend to sell a lot better than the kind that I like. So the key is knowing what audience you're trying to reach and what your goals are as an author. So for me, living in the past by means of trying to understand how the people of the past thought is a really important part of what I enjoy about writing these books. But for other people, the costume drama is where all the fun is. It's like think of any movie with Keira Knightley in it. It is not really going to be very historical, but it could be fun if you can stand her, which I cannot. So, okay, showing off your iceberg. Okay, this might be a good place to pause. Are there questions? Can we lose Kathy? Okay.
No, but I will say about Keira Knightley, I'd love to have her neck.
Oh, her neck. We'll find.
Yes.
Let's see that neck when she gets to be our age.
Well, yeah, but just once. Okay, guys, seriously, there's so much information going on here. Do we have any questions?
Yeah. We can wait till we get to the end.
All right. Okay. I would be interested to know a little bit about what folks are writing, if you're writing anything in a historical nature. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through and just thought I'd throw that out there. If I were going to write in a different time zone, it would be in the future. But I'm really excited that we're doing this program, Heidi, and you're nailing it. So Anna, so take it away again.
Yeah, Heidi is fine. Yeah, there's a lot in common between writing historical and science fiction, and you'll often find writers doing both because it's a world building. I mean, in science fiction, you're kind of making everything up depending on how scientifically correct you want to be. Fantasy, you're definitely making it all up. Although you're relying on other people's ideas. You gotta have a planet that's consistent. But in historical fiction, you're studying most of it. But all histories are so full of gaps. You're making up a ton of it anyway. And so there's all this world building that goes on in both cases. Okay, so we call it the iceberg, the research that you do. This mountain of books and articles that I read. I only reveal a little of it. Only use a little bit of it, and you don't necessarily. You need a big, deep iceberg because you don't know which part necessarily you're going to need until you start telling your story. And as your series goes on, you use different parts of it. It comes up being handy. So you only show the readers the part that floats above water, the stuff that's directly relevant to the story. Do not wander off and tell them little cool things that you know, like the thing about the sheriff who can't deal with the woman. I think I did use that, but that was in the third book, which was about women harboring Catholics, actually, and how they got away with it and what a problem they were. So that's why it was relevant. But I read that years before. I thought, finally, I get to use that little tidbit. The trick is to say as little as possible. This is true for setting period and backstory period, right? It's just general writing advice. Say as little as possible at the moment. Just don't be mystifying. But you can write stuff as thinly as you can in a way, using your own judgment, not to be mystifying, and then let whoever's giving you that critical feedback on the first couple of drafts tell you what they didn't understand. Right. So I had that on my last Bacon book. It's like I'm so tired of explaining some of this stuff, and I had somebody reading it who hadn't read the rest of the series, and she's like, well, I don't know what's going on. So it didn't take that much for me to clarify it, but I did have to rejigger that chapter to make it clear for a first-time reader. Although by the time they get to book 7, I'm thinking, just go back and start at the beginning. For setting and costume, the methods are the same as for any kind of fiction. Keep it to the necessary and do it with attitude, right? My Elizabethans judge everyone by their clothing. So that gives me a good way to describe what everybody's wearing. It's like, that velvet was worn practically smooth. He's obviously pretending to have money that he doesn't have. Or, his clothes are patched in back, or the silk lining gleaming through the things, of pristine clothes. Victorian houses are full of knickknacks. If you walk in and you see whatever you see, it's like, whoa, that the knickknacks are carefully chosen to express the owner's character or their conformity. So, you use this stuff to exhibit character, both the character of the observer and the character of one being observed. Never just take that bird's eye view, fly in and kind of look at the town and go, oh, here's this, here's that, or the room. Never do that. You may do that for yourself in a private draft so that you know where stuff is. I mean, I sketch stuff all the time just so I can remember if I'm supposed to turn left or right. I have a lot of trouble with those concepts. And but don't put all that stuff in your book. Don't tell us unless we need to know it. Always describe things from your point of view, character's perspective. I mean, maybe they hated their aunt and her endless yapping about Switzerland. Then they take one of these hand crocheted, where do these antimacassars come from? Oh yeah, the ones that are on every chair. Then they're like, oh, another one. Oh, another one. So then you give us a flavor of the room of this aunt with a lot of personal attitude. So that's just that's how you use that iceberg. It's the same as any setting, really. And for historical context, sometimes you just have to lay it out. And then you do your best. You have your best, you have your protagonist either telling somebody, explaining it to them, which is ideal because then they can ask questions, or you just do it. In your cleanest, neatest expository prose, you say, this is this, you lay out 1-2 paragraphs tops of a political context or whatever context it is the reader needs to understand what's going on. Never do that in the first act, but by the time you get to act 2, it's like The Lord of the Rings isn't a perfect example of this, but it's a pretty close to perfect example. So in the beginning, you have this fun birthday party, and you do slog down with some explanation, but you immediately, after that, finally, you get the hobbits into trouble, right? And I remember when I was 12, 13, 14, I could not go to sleep until I got them safely into Rivendell because I was so scared all the way from the knife in the dark to Rivendell. And so we get through all of that, and then we sit down with a bunch of boring old men and learn a lot about ancient history, right? So this is how you insert your history. You really get your reader invested in your characters and in the action and everything else. And then you sit down and tell them a whole bunch of boring stuff. They'll go with you at that point. They're like, I need a couple of months of rest. So, okay, here's a question that people often love to debate. Are the people of the past just like us? And the answer is sort of yes and sort of no. I mean, they put their pants on one leg at a time if they wear pants because they have 2 legs. They sneeze, they fart, they fall in and out of love. They have pride and ambition, even women. They're witty or dull, quick or slow, sloppy or neat, timid or brave. I mean, Shakespeare would not be popular if the people of the past were not kind of, in a lot of ways, just like us. But they probably had profoundly different worldviews and systems of explanation. It's like, just look at beliefs about disease transmission. So there were many, many, many thousands of years when disease was caused by supernatural elements that were out to get you, right? A demon or a spirit or some kind of thing that you did. You failed to acknowledge a demon or a spirit or whatever supernatural it is. That's why you got sick. Could be simpleness. Or, there was the miasma theory, which was current right up until around the time of the First World War, that disease was spread by bad air. The Elizabethans thought disease would enter your skin through the pores. So they didn't bathe in water. They weren't stinky. They rubbed themselves from head to toe with linen cloths every day and wore clean linens. And one woman has written a great book about how she lived that way all summer and she smelled like a rose. But there are different theories. Up until the mid 19th century, moving in, there was no understanding that there were little invisible things called germs that might have caused problems for human beings. So there were all these other explanatory systems, right? I mean, my Moriartys have plumbing in their house. They have hot water in the bathroom on the second floor landing. Only Moriarty is willing to get in there naked to take a bath. the women are just like, no, I'm not getting in there with that drain. Who knows what could come up that drain? No, no, no. They sponge bathe by the fire in their bedrooms. So it's really important to understand that people have these belief systems and they make perfect sense to them. They're not, don't be anachronistic and say, well, I think there could be something invisible. I mean, Francis Bacon thought there could be something, that things might actually be composed of atoms, but he was, he was out there, genius level, prescient, kind of almost supernatural in himself. And people mostly would just ignore that stuff. Like, Francis, come back to what we're actually talking about. They may know in their bones that it's right for lords to live in fine houses and rule those under them. They might not. They might chafe at the difference, but they still know that it's God's will. That's the way the world was made. The Elizabethans had this enormous hierarchy. Absolutely every single thing was ranked. And lots of people might not know if a fox ranked higher than a weasel, but somebody knew, because the lists were that comprehensive. And so they would know. There are people in the Downton Abbey time who thought, man, in the early time, they're lucky to get a job as an upstairs maid, even if they're working 10 hours a day, because it beats the hell out of being a tenant farmer's daughter or wife, right? And so there are a lot of people, a lot of young people going into service for and thinking they were lucky to get those good jobs. Hot meals, roof over your head, somebody who cared if you fell down a well. So for me, getting inside that worldview is the whole point. And the mystery plot is the chocolate sauce that keeps me dipping my spoon back in the dish. But it also is fun, I think, even for a relatively thin history, to have at least most of your characters. If your protagonist has anachronistic attitudes, okay, fine. That's what you're writing. But the other characters should be true to their time. And,
Hi, Anna, we've got a question. It's kind of about what you've talked about before. May I?
Sure.
Okay, this is from Helen Curry Foster. Anna, can you talk about maps of London and how you researched locations? And I love your Francis Bacon mysteries.
Oh, thank you. So the main way to research locations in London is to go there often and get an Oyster card and visit every single building that is still standing that was there during your time period. It is so much fun to travel with a book in your head. I can't begin to recommend it so highly. You don't have to do it. There's a picture of absolutely everything in the British Isles on the web. Those people love their land. And literally, if you go to someplace like Flickr, you will find a picture of every single square inch. And so so you don't have to go, but it's really fun to go. And I've been in all these stately homes and Elizabethan buildings and kind of get a sense of space. You could move into any of the ones that are still standing tomorrow and you'd be cold, but they would not be cold because they were dressed in layers of linen and wool. Maps are really fun. I have, hold on. Let's see. Can you see me? I don't think you can. Let me not share. Let me stop share for a minute. Yeah, you can't really see this. The A to Z of Elizabethan London, which is it has everything. It's the whole city. So yeah, I study this all the time. I'm a nut about actually which street are we crossing, and it's ridiculous. It's probably way too much, but I can't help it. So if my guys are going from one place to another, I'm studying my A to Z map and going, oh, okay, there. Here they have to go this way. They have to walk down the Strand, and then they're on this little street. So it's absolutely, it's absolutely correct. My copy editor looks stuff up, and she goes, "I can't find that street." I'm going, well, don't worry about it because it's in the A to Z. So, and there are maps like that of, let's see, Elizabethan. There's a Georgian. There's like Alexander Pope, or is it Pepys? I can't remember. A map of that period. There's definitely Regency London, and there's Victorian London online that you can find. You kind of have to look. Not everything has a map. Most of the things in England and probably France and other big cities like Antwerp, Italy, you'll find maps. I don't know how good maps would be for the US because I've never looked, but I'll bet there are. They might not be, they might be more they might have north like on the right or something. So you might have to, print them and reorient them and white out the stuff you don't care about and write your own names in there. Yeah, maps. I spend a lot of time on maps. I think most people who write historical fiction are a little bit nutty about maps of that time. So yeah, it's a great question. But that's one of those iceberg things. Although it is nice to know that, it helps you stay oriented so that you know where things are. And another thing about going there is that it helps you to understand the map is so full of stuff, historically interesting stuff. And then you go there and you realize that to walk from Gray's Inn to Newgate is a matter of 10 minutes tops, even with modern traffic. They had a lot of traffic too. But you have to stop and wait for a red light. Still only takes 10 minutes. The distances are nothing compared to what we think of. That was a long answer. Should I go on?
Yeah, right now on my screen that you were sharing, we're in the middle of two. And I did have one question, but I think you're coming up on it. Again, from Helen Curry Foster. You said you were glad to self-publish a particular genre. Can you talk more about that? But I think you're about to get into the publishing thing.
Yeah, let me move on. I think I am about to get into the publishing thing. Let's see, we did the people of the past. Oh, what's going on here? Okay. Yeah, how can I publish my wonderful book? So that depends on your goals, your skills, and your willingness to learn new things. I love self-publishing. Like I said, it uses all the skills I learned as managing a digital archive at a big university. Well, I don't actually have to write grant proposals. But I mean, seriously, that was a big part of my work. But I did have to manage a spreadsheet of expenses and keep track of everything. And I'm telling you, I do my travel expenses now the way I was trained to do them at UT. So they're like audit proof. I am very rigorous about drawing a fine line between work-related travel and friend and family-related travel. And I keep everything, my little museum passes, my Oyster card, deduct every scrap that is work-related. So that was good training on that front. But your goals, that's first. If your great dream is an agent in a big 5 publishing house and nothing else will make you happy, then that is what you must pursue. I personally think it's nuts, but if that's your madness, then you must go there. Write a brilliant book about a new figure in World War II and write it fast and you might get there. I mean, apparently World War II is still the hot. But if it's a great book, it doesn't have to be about that. You might find one. I had an agent and it took her 1.5 years. Finally got an agent for Murder by Misrule. Took her 1.5 years to collect 12 rejection letters. And by that time, I realized I was rooting for no. So I didn't want to work with any of those people. It was like, oh, thank God they said no. And so then I had learned something finally about self-publishing. That was back in 2013. And I decided to go rogue. But if all you want to do is write what you love and see your books out there, and you're not really that concerned about money, then find a small press. There are lots of them, and they have much more varied tastes. There are small presses that specialize in cozy mysteries. There are small presses that specialize in historical fiction. You won't make much money, but you will have some very loyal readers. You'll have books to sign at festivals, and you'll get to kind of basically lay back and do nothing but write. Do your homework. A lot of small presses go out of business every day. Some of them, like Poison Pen, wasn't even all that small, and they went out and basically crashed all their, just kind of left their authors hanging in the wind there for a while. And that was another one where I was like, oh, thank God I don't have to work with that woman. So if you can tolerate tedious chores and you think you would like the busy, friendly world of self-publishing, go indie. This is the path I recommend, obviously. I love it. Indies are optimistic and kind of always jazzed. You go to a conference, the people who are searching for agents are kind of glum. They're sitting over there at their table comparing notes about all the rejection letters they're getting. It's like getting up every morning and slapping yourself in the face a few times. The way I look at looking for an agent. It's debilitating. And then you don't know whether to write the second book in your series. It can go on for years. And the indies are all like, talking over each other, sharing notes, and what do you do? What do you do? So I like choosing my own team of editors and cover designers. I love that. I really like having control over my cover design in the sense that it's the thing I want. She gives me proofs, and we really study them. For the first in a new series, we put quality time into thinking about concepts and images and stuff. It's a lot of fun. I love being the one being involved in that. I like deciding when, where, how I sell my books. I like learning hard things like calculating sell-through. I still don't think I understand that. I have a friend who is a statistician, and as soon as we feel like it's safe to go back to the coffee shop and sit together and let him do my math for me, then we're going to do that. But it's very good for my brain. I tell you, being an indie author, you have to wear a lot of different hats, and it is good for you to do that, especially
Anna?
as you get older. Mhm.
On that note, pretend we're at that coffee table. I have a question from Pat Kelly.
Okay.
I noticed that you sell some book bundles with series 1 to 3. How do you decide how to price those bundles? And he loves your covers. And how do you find the designers you use?
Yeah. Okay. Box sets. I don't really think my box sets are very successful, frankly, and I don't love them. Especially I had to reduce the price on my Francis Bacon box set because the first book is free everywhere. So I think that first in series free is a great strategy if you once you get to at least book 4, so that they buy that book. I mean, they get your free book, they read it, they like it, they go to the second one. Almost everyone who gets to the end of my second book buys all the rest of my Francis Bacon series. So so that's what you're hoping for, and something like 3.7% the sell-through that I don't understand of the people who read my free book buy the second book, but that's 3.7% of tens of thousands of giveaway downloads. So the box set, you just put the first ones in there, and the pricing, it's got to be something like 40% off if you were buying the 3 books individually, right? Unless the first one's free. So for the Moriarty series, I think is priced at 40% off, whatever $4.99 times 3 is. And so cover designers, yeah. Well, the first thing you do is go to Amazon and browse for your very specific subgenre. So I did this actually a couple of years ago with Victorian mysteries. I needed to recover my Moriarty books because they weren't selling. And somebody gave me the tip that my cover just didn't really say anything. Covers do a huge amount of work. They have to signal, genre, right? Mystery, fantasy. They have to signal light or dark. They have to give a sense of, female, male protagonist. And they have to have your name on there, and they have to look professional because people don't like, it just says a lot about your where you are in your publishing stage. So you go and you look and you study whatever subgenre you're in. Let's say you're in ancient Rome, cozy mysteries. So you go there and you look at a bunch of those and see what people are doing. And then any Roman mystery has a Roman centurion on it, except unless it's a female protagonist, and then it's a woman. And women's clothes tell you period better than anything else. So your historical cover has to give you a sense of period. Thank you for liking my covers. I'm always doubtful about them. But and then you get involved in groups, writers groups. I strongly recommend that. We've got Sisters in Crime, and they have an online forum. Guppies have an online forum. You get into one of those groups and you say, hey, recommend some cover designers for such and such genre. And then you also Google cover designers, ancient Roman cozy mysteries, and you see who pops up. And they should have a website with tons of examples. If you like them and you can see something about their pricing that works for you, go there. Put a lot of effort into your covers because they're very important. So I hope that answered your question. Long-winded.
That's all the questions right now. So just go, girl.
I'm moving on. Okay, so I like doing all this indie stuff. I live on retirement funds, so I'm not tied to a fast-selling genre. If you want to make a living, there are different strategies. I would recommend a book by Chris Fox, Fox like the animal. I'm not going to remember the title, but it has to do with choosing a hot genre. Like that Edwardian cozy mysteries, you may look and go, oh my God, there's already a million. No, there's room. Regency mystery, they're going to be thinner. You might need a little anachronism, although Sarah Rosette's characters are not at all anachronistic in attitude. So, you can look around and see what are the top 100 historical mysteries that come up and see what's selling. So then the secret to success as a self-publishing author in terms of making money is to find that intersection between what you like to read. You should always read what you write. What you like to write, not the same thing. I read science fiction and fantasy. I don't write them. My imagination just doesn't go there. And what sells, right? So if you're writing science fiction, you're going to want to write battleship kind of space operas. Those things sell like hotcakes. Contemporary romance sells like hotcakes. So, you got to find your niche. If you don't need to make a living, you live on retirement fund, it's not an accident that a lot of writers are seniors, then just write whatever you want and then get out there and find your audience. So self-publishing is a big topic all on its own. I love it. I love the energy. I love the control. I write in the morning. So I get my writing done, walk the dog, come back, write 3-4 hours. I've written my chapter. I'm a plotter, so I always know what I'm going to write that day. And then I do something else. I go to the gym, work in the yard, whatever I do. And then I'll put an hour or two tops in the evening into, late afternoon, kind of an hour basically into writing biz. And some days I don't really have anything to do. So there's not, once you learn the business stuff, it's not that much work.
But when you run out of biz for you, I'll give you a call. And
yeah, no, sorry, only me. That's another thing about self-publishing. Only me. I only publish my own books. But no, and I would often, when I finish a book, especially a full-length one like a Bacon or Moriarty book, I'm a little burned out. I don't want to write anymore. I can't just go directly to the next book. And I got all this launch stuff to do. So I'll usually take a month after each book and learn some new tricks. Like a couple of years ago, I spent the month of July revamping my newsletter and reading books about newsletters and reading, learning MailerLite. So pardon me. So, I mean, that's another way. Learn a new trick. You don't have to learn it all at once. Learn one new trick at a time. And then gradually you'll start to realize that actually it only takes 15 minutes to check in on your ads and then you're done. And that was it for today. There are a lot of great resources. Okay. This turned out to be kind of small. So I have to say this special note about diversity, because this comes up all the time on the Historical Novel Society Facebook page. Am I running out of time? Are we okay?
No, you're fine. You got about 20 more minutes.
Oh,
actually, if I could say 15, because there's a little bit of business at the end.
Okay, 15 is plenty. So basically this comes up all the time. Usually somebody who is unhappy will post about how they can't sell a book anymore because their protagonist is white, or because their protagonist isn't a woman, or that agents only want protagonists who are women or people of color. Well, female protagonists are popular because women buy most of the books, so that's not to be terribly surprising. These days, this is like well over 50%, right, of books bought by women. But it's not, I don't know really what agents want. And, that tight little New York circle of agents and editors, it's a small world, and they're always kind of looking for new things. They're jaded, I think, and they're very much in tune with each other. When I asked my agent to pitch my my Texas Cozy mystery, I got exactly the same response from all 5 big publishers. I mean, exactly the same words, right? So how did that happen? I don't know, because they all use the same words. It's too edgy for our catalog. The word penis occurred in it. It's a very bad thing, the penis. It's just a picture of a penis, but there was the word. Too edgy. So they're very much kind of living in each other's laps. It wouldn't surprise me if they all had the same ideas. All of a sudden, it's like, oh no, we need people of color in our books. We can't get anything else. That wouldn't surprise me. That doesn't mean that that's all that readers want, although readers do want more diversity in their entertainment. You can see it in TV, you can see it in movies, you can see it in books. So for me, thought about it, read some articles. If you're curious, Google something like, what did I say? Diversity in historical fiction. You'll find some very interesting articles. For me, it's more of an opportunity than an obstacle. It's like encouraging you. You've chosen this setting, right? This time and place that you love. Dig in and look around a little bit. You'll find not just women everywhere doing everything, but all kinds of people all over the place. Smithsonian Magazine loves to highlight, the pieces of history that we've forgotten about and were never talked about. There was this Muslim guy, a merchant in outer Wyoming in the mid 19th century who had a big clan, all Muslims, and they just, flourished out there. You would think, no, there's no Muslims in America in that time and place. Well, yes, there were. So don't look at it as obstacle or intimidation. Look at it as opportunity and inspiration. Tired old milieu. I mean, you want to freshen up that Edwardian period, find a person of color or a blind person or some other, it's not just the next point. Diversity isn't just race. It's gender, orientation, age, class, ableism, religion. Find a person who is not your usual straight, white, middle-class protagonist, and you've just opened up a whole new view of that setting that you're in. And people will like it, if you do your job right. So I don't know. You don't need a lot to diversify the environment around the characters. It's like some people put Jewish apothecaries in Elizabethan London. I think that's they're more likely to have been Dutch for one thing. But also, it makes a thing out of this character who was kind of an unlikely character and very unlikely to be central to the stories of that time. They were so rare. But it did occur to me that I couldn't have an African person in Francis Bacon's milieu without that person being the center of the story. And I just can't think of a story where that would make any kind of sense in his life. But I could easily have an African person working as a carpenter near the docks in London in the Elizabethan period. And I realized that the minute I thought of that, I thought, well, Tom would think nothing of it. He sailed around to the New World with his father and saw all kinds of people in the places where the sailors hang out and on all the ships. Trumpet would be so astonished. One of my female character who still like cross-dressing, she would be so astonished to see a person that was actually Black that she would probably fall right on her ass. And the minute I thought, okay, I'm going to have to write that one. So it's not hard to diversify your environment with, meeting people. Just think a little harder about who's actually in there when you go inside that house or you go walking up that farm road. You don't need to know very much for that. But for secondary and primary characters, you got to do some homework, but you're already doing a ton of homework to write your historical fiction. So what's a little more? You wouldn't write about a riverboat gambler without learning how to play cards, right? I mean, you'd at least try to learn something. Find some resources. There might be diaries, depending on the period, diaries, biographies of someone similar to your character. They might be a person higher up than your character, but, prejudice lowers people's status. So you may be dressed like a gentleman, but if you're Black, you're not going to be quite the same as the other people. I'm making up this title, read like A History of Coffee Plantations in Jamaica, because I have this story idea called Moriarty Smells the Coffee, and they're going to have to go to Jamaica and investigate crimes on a coffee plantation. And it was just, that's a big side thing. Follow the references in that first thing. Ask a librarian. Post a Historical Novel Society Facebook page. You might get a bunch of pushback from anti-diversity people, but you're also going to get somebody who says, oh, there's a link to a series of letters exchanged by so-and-so and so-and-so. There's a website that includes or advertises or presents a series of courses and books and articles called Writing the Other. This is a major, excellent resource. It's founded by a couple of science fiction writers, science fiction fantasy writers. They have books, they have classes, they have everything. There are Facebook pages where you can ask questions, and you'll find a bunch of great articles. I think it's an opportunity to make old things new. Like think about Bridgerton. How much fun is Bridgerton? I mean, it's completely implausible that those people are Black, but we love it anyway, right? And I don't even remember the Blackness as much as I think about all that orange and turquoise clothing they were wearing. It's like, wow, this is one heck of a colorful show. Okay, so that's my final note about diversity. And here is the obligatory page of references. And that is that. Questions? I've just talked your ears off. You're all like, oh.
But it was marvelous. Okay, so what questions do we have from the group? Please send them in, or unmute yourself and we'll just talk.
Yeah, just unmute yourself. We don't really need this. I'll stop sharing and go to gallery view, which I'm in. Yeah, all right.
Okay.
There is the peoples. Okay. So does anybody?
And do you outline your books?
If you mean plot, yes. I know people, to me, an outline is like an NSF grant proposal, which is 1.3.4.12. And so for me, no, I don't do that, but I do plot. Yeah, no, I plot. I love Save the Cat for plotting. So I actually do a beat sheet for almost everything I write. And it helps me. I find it very helpful.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, I never get up in the morning and go, oh no, what am I going to write today? I always know what scene is coming, so I can kind of think about it while I'm being lazy in the evening.
I do have a question on the chat. Any suggestions regarding time travel into the past?
Oh, time travel. I don't read that genre, but it is a big thriving genre thanks to Outlander, right? I think a lot of people like time travel, and it solves that problem of anachronistic worldviews, because your modern protagonist takes his and or her modern views back in time with them. So you get to do what a lot of people really want, which is to look at the past with the modern eye and say, well, that's not right. Well, that's kind of neat. Well, that's not right. I mean, people talk about, religious intolerance in Elizabethan England. And I'm like, yeah, people are pretty intolerant today also. But, everything they ate was free range and organic. And all their clothes were fitted to their bodies unless they were poor, including their shoes. I've never worn a pair of bespoke shoes. I bet they're wonderful. So, I mean, pros and cons. But no, it's very, very popular. One of my role model authors is Sarah Woodbury. Nice, easy to remember name. She, her ancestors come from Wales. So when she decided to start writing historical mystery, she settled in Wales and built several castles and has resided there ever since. She now has something like 30 books. She's a hugely successful indie author. And one of the reasons is because she has so many books, but also she started early. And so she got in on the gold rush with her excellent books. So she has several series, and two of them, I think, are time travel series, and they're just insanely popular. So yeah, go do that. You still have to do the research, but you don't have to worry so much about your protagonist being a person of the past. They can be you, so you can get your fantasies out. Yeah.
Well, I tag onto that concept in my books. I have a guy who's never been in Texas come to Texas. And so he sees that new world, that completely different, totally new world from a point of view, so that you can get the reader involved in learning about this new world without it, as a new person would see it. So it seems like time travel would be an opportunity for something like that.
Exactly. It's that fish out of water perspective. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a lot of fun. It's its own separate genre. So, you would find that in a category. You go to Amazon and do time travel historical And there are different, there are panels about it at the Historical Novel Society. It's its own big thing. So absolutely, the water is fine. Jump right on in there.
Kathy asked earlier if anybody had written anything historical and what era it was written in. And I wrote something that's barely historical, but I had to do a ton of research because it's before I was born, because it's set in the 60s.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I was just
pal.
a kid in the 60s. I didn't have a car. But I mean, my Texas cozies, I had to choose cars for people, hats, had to choose music. What kind of music do they listen to? I never got good answers on that. I just had to, decide that she had eclectic taste, so she would listen to stuff that I like.
Well, there was a call for submissions for a collection coming out next year called Groovy Gumshoes, and it's private eye stories from the 60s. And they wanted you to choose also a historical event from the 60s to include in your story. So I chose the UT Tower shooting.
Wow.
And there's video of that day, and there's all kinds of documentation. So I could see what the people were wearing, what the cars looked like. They're just a ton of information just by watching the videos, which made it a lot easier.
That's
So
cool.
yeah.
Okay,
Videos.
going over to Helen.
Golly, I was on the UT campus that day.
Oh my God.
So was
Oh,
my
sure.
father. So I was asking him questions.
It was terrifying. My sister-in-law's sister got shot walking into the Cheftal Jewelry over on Guadalupe. So yeah,
Yep.
but there's a
Yep.
ton of stuff.
There's
Austin Shakespeare did a playwriting class. I've never written a play in my life, but I love Austin Shakespeare. So I thought I would do it, and we had to just write one scene. And so I wrote a scene where Virginia Woolf, of course, I've read all of her books, all of her diaries, all of her, jumped,
Wow.
went to Vanessa's house down on the South Downs, et cetera, and to Rodmell, blah, blah, blah. So imagining a scene where she tells T.S. Eliot how poorly she's been treated by Desmond McCarthy, who said she doesn't know how to write anything about the real action of the human being.
Yeah.
And it was, really challenging for me, never having done anything like a play scene, but it was so rewarding to try to jump back into that time frame and imagine what that was like, and using the real words from those characters. It was just thrilling.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah. You really, I don't know. I mean, it's fun to write any kind of novel. You get really into your settings and your characters and stuff like that. I mean, it's fun when it's not insanely frustrating, but obviously it's more fun than frustrating, or we wouldn't keep doing it. But I love it. Yeah, the immersion.
How far are you and Francis traveling?
How far? I mean, how long is the series? Yeah, I'm hoping to live long enough to get to the end of his life. So I am absolutely going to have to skip some years, right? I've been going year by year, and I've got to skip. So this one I think is 94. I might be able to skip to 95. And I haven't really quite looked at the time on that. But I mean, I just got to skip some years if I'm going to get, I realized I could wait. And when he becomes Lord Chancellor, which is still a long way away, I'm only in 94, and I don't think he becomes Lord Chancellor until, 1613. So I got to skip some years in there. But when he becomes Lord Chancellor, I can totally skip that whole period and just jump to the end of his life and have it be a mystery. Tom will have to solve the mystery of how he died.
Okay, last question,
Okay.
if any. Okay, well, if none, I want to reiterate something Anna said. And if you have any questions about what you really need to learn or where you can look for it, there's always the librarians. Roxana and Maureen, you guys rock. Thank you to the two of you for figuring out a plan B to get us online. Roxana, you are our savior. And we thank you so much. And we remember that you can answer those kinds of questions too, or help us find them. Anna, thank you so much. Your presentation was just stellar. I wanted to give a little heads up about next month's speaker. And we will be back to the second Tuesday. And it is going to be Kay George,
Oh, yeah.
writing the good, the bad, the ugly, and the funny. All the stories she can tell as a best-selling author across the spectrum of mystery genres, both traditional and indie,
And historical.
a Silver Falchion winner and an Agatha Christie and Derringer finalist, and a reviewer for Suspense Magazine, an editor of the What's Your Process column in Mysterical E! Magazine. She's been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. Join us for a lively and entertaining walk through her story, career, and bring your questions. It's gonna be a blast. So I hope everybody can join us. Again, a reminder, members only, marketing happy hour, first Thursday in June. I believe that's June the 3rd at 4 o'clock. We'll send the Zoom out to the members. And any questions or anything we need to talk about before we take off? God bless you all. Stay healthy. We made it maybe through the worst of it, and hopefully we will see you in person soon. That would be really cool. I know it won't be next month, but we'll talk with the library and see what you guys are doing and what you want us to do. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful month, and see you in about May,
In a
June
little while.
13th. June 13th. Take care. Bye-bye, y'all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.